Hello, hello, hello! I am your host, Stephen Radford, here with another episode of Nintendo Noise. I'm filling in for Pete, so I'm so sorry if you were expecting Pete's voice, but I am joined, as always, by the wonderful Chuy Huerta.
Hey, how's it going?
And this week we're also joined by a special guest, Chuy's co-host from Haken, an Animal Crossing podcast. This is Miss Nina Chamberlain, aka Grizzly Crossing. Hey Nina, how are you?
Be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for filling in for Pete. It's going to be great. You know, you're probably going to be just as loud and energetic and brash as Pete is.
Also, I'm gonna throw Pete under the bus here. Both of us have now officially been on more episodes of Nintendo Noise than him, so he's got to pick up the slack.
Yes, yeah, absolutely does. So I think, Chew, what that means is we can just have next week off, and Pete's going to do the show on his own.
All by himself.
Yeah, all by himself. Just being like.
I wonder if he'll get tired though. I don't think he will.
No, I think he'll find new ways to argue with himself about things. He'll be like, no, I don't think that's quite right. Anyway, before we get started, we've got a bunch of things to talk about this week. We're going to be talking, of course, about Game Boy games coming to Nintendo Switch Online. But before we do that, I just need to say thank you so much to our Patreon producers for the month of September. They are Christopher Valens, aka That Dot Guy, Zaid Ida, and Wakahula. Thank you so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. And if you sign up for the $1 a month tier, you'll get access to our exclusive podcast, One More Thing, where this week you'll hear all about Pete's basement just absolutely crumbling under the rainfall in Philadelphia this week. So it has been flooded and he's been moved and it's a whole thing. But anyway, he's on holiday relaxing, so thankfully he'll hopefully come back refreshed and ready to take over the show again. But if you want more of us and you don't want to support us on Patreon, or you can't support us on Patreon, that's absolutely fine. We are also on Twitch. The three of us did a great Twitch stream of Splatoon 2 this week over on twitch.tv/flipscreengames. You can go and watch Chewy just absolutely destroying Nina and I at Splatoon 2.
Not good.
No, it's not good at all. And then finally, you can find us everywhere on flipscreen.games and come and join our Discord. Send us questions to questions@flipscreen.games. Did I miss anything, Chewy? I think that's everything.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's everything. Everything is there. We don't shill as much as Pete does.
No, we don't shill as much as Pete. So.
What a sellout.
So, yeah, let's get into the show. So the first thing we want to talk about this week, of course, is the Game Boy games and potentially Game Boy Color games coming to Switch Online. This first came from the Nate the Hate podcast. It was confirmed by Nintendo Live, later confirmed by Eurogamer. So I think we can kind of take this one to the bank. But I was curious, knowing that both of you were kind of Game Boy fans, maybe Nina less so, more GBA, but I'm curious as to finding out what your relationship with those consoles are, and then also just like touching on what games we are excited to potentially come, and then maybe some features we want in that app, and then possibly other platforms as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Chewy, because I know you've got a console on hand that you can use as a prop. But I'm very curious as to where you first started with the Game Boy.
So this is not my first Game Boy, but I started with the original, like that big blocky one. I have no idea where that one is. I think one of my siblings has it, because it was definitely like a console we passed around and just played Tetris. Tons and tons of Tetris on it. But yeah, I started with the original like big brick Game Boy. We had a Game Boy Pocket, which was just the smaller version.
Yeah.
It was a little green Game Boy Pocket. I know who has that one.
Because my dad had one of those and still has one of those. He's even bought a little like stand from Etsy for it. It's a see-through one. I absolutely love that console.
Oh, the see-through flavors are the best.
Yeah, I love the see-through consoles.
Yeah, I know my sister has that one because she really liked the green color for it. She was like a lime fan, but it was kind of a dark green, I would say. Mm-hmm. And she probably took Tetris with it too, because that's all she played really. Um, and then the Game Boy Color came out too, and funny enough, I have never in my life bought a Game Boy Color. My parents have never bought a Game Boy Color, but somehow I've had like three different ones, I want to say.
Okay, where did they
Uh,
come from then? Were they just like hand-me-downs to you, or taken like friends gave them to you or something?
I think some were like friends who got like both versions of Pokemon and another Game Boy so they could like play with somebody else. And they're like, oh, you need a Game Boy so you can play Pokemon? And I was like, well, yeah, that'd be great. And they're like, here, you can use mine.
Wow.
This is my other one. You can play this version of Pokemon. And then just like, I kept it long enough so that they didn't remember that I had it.
It's like, where's my
And
Game Boy
so
gun?
and so I mean they never asked for it back, and I was just like, I'm kind of attached to this thing now. This one in particular though, I have no idea where this one came from. Sometime in college I got my hands on this Game Boy, and I have no idea who it was, who where it came from, but I was just like, this is an awesome one. It's the Pikachu and Togepi and Jigglypuff here. It's a
That's
Pokemon
really,
themed
really
Game
cool.
Boy. It's a little beat up for sure. Mostly the back has like tape on it to keep the little battery cover on. And then also same thing with like the copy of Pokemon Crystal that's in here. No idea where that came from. It was just in this Game Boy Color. But yeah, no, so my story with it is like I grew up doing these really huge long road trips into Mexico with my parents. And my mom's from Colima and my dad's from Michoacan. They're kind of neighboring states, but about halfway through the country, very coastal. And so I would drive down there with them, and that would take about 3 days or so. So every trip, I was like, all right, I got to make sure I have my Game Boy and just a ton of batteries because this is all I have to do for, I don't know, 36 hours or so in the car. So yeah, I remember I had a lot of different Game Boys, especially like Game Boy Advances and things like that, and all the peripherals to make it so you can like see the screen at night.
I
Because I
was
was
gonna
like,
say,
what am
did
I
you
gonna?
have any of the like worm lights or like things that went over the top so you could actually see it on those car journeys, or were you just like holding it against the window, just hoping for a little glimpse of sunlight so you could actually see it?
Y- I mean, with my Game Boy Advance, I definitely had more. With the Game Boys, it was like once night hit, I was just like, oh man, I'm so bored now. I have nothing to do. Sleep? Why? Why would I want to do that?
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I just really enjoyed those road trips. I have a lot of games that are kind of like attached to those memories of just me being in a car for hours, and I don't know if I could handle that now. I'd probably get a little bit more car sick from it, but I think back then when I
Yeah.
could, it was a good time. Good
No,
way to spend the time.
I'm the same as you. I think I would get car sick now, but I remember being in the back of my parents' car, and we would go camping or go to a caravan for our holidays most years. And it would always be I would take my Game Boy. I had for my Game Boy Color was my first Game Boy. I did use my dad's Game Boy Pocket, but the Game Boy Color was my first Game Boy. And I had this giant Game Boy. It looked like a giant Game Boy that you put your Game Boy and all those games in. So I was like,
Ooh.
I would
That's
carry this
awesome.
thing around my shoulder. I would take it everywhere with me. You could like print or you could draw a picture in the screen. Had like a bit of plastic that came off. I think my dad printed me off a picture to put on it. He must have a photo of me somewhere with this Game Boy case that I carried absolutely everywhere. And then I progressed on to the GBA. And the GBA I think is the one that I have most affinity to and memory to, just because it's I don't know, it's around that time that I really got into gaming. So I was born in '92, and I feel like that was around about I was what, maybe 10 when the
Mhm.
GBA came out. I think that was really when I got big into gaming. But I've always been a bigger fan of handhelds than home consoles, I would say. I think that's probably changed a little bit in the last few years as I've got my own place and settled down a little bit. But until then, it was always handhelds. But yeah,
Mhm.
what about you, Nina? Like, did you have any Game Boys or anything when you were a kid?
Yeah, so we and I had to call my brothers to really remember what we had because like you, my like first actual one that I saved up for was the Game Boy Advance SP. So it was like a little
Oh, I
square
love
that could
that one.
close. It was awesome.
Those are still
Um,
the best.
they're awesome. But we also had the see-through purple pocket. And then my older brother
Mm.
was saying he had a yellow one, but which I assume is the Pikachu
No, they
version.
did do just a yellow one at
Oh,
some point
okay,
as well.
good.
So the
Just like yellow
original,
and gray.
like yeah, the original fat Game Boy came. I
Hmm.
think it was in grey and yellow, and I think they were the only two colors you could get it in. And then they did the Game Boy Pocket, which came in a bunch of colors. Like obviously, was it your sister had the green one, Chewy?
Yeah, yeah, the green.
Gotcha. So we apparently had the yellow one, even though I have no memory of it whatsoever. He must have kept it to himself. But I do remember having the see-through purplish, it's like a purplish grayish color. Um, and we were like always getting hand-me-downs from other kids in the neighborhood. So like when the SNES came out, we got someone's NES, and then when the 64 came out, we got
Nice.
someone's SNES. So we were always a little bit behind with the games and things, but I do remember saving up for the SP. That was amazing.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, the SP I think is the best of the all of the Game Boys, including
Mhm.
like I know some people really love the Game Boy Micro, but I just think that's a little bit too small. Even though the screen on that is gorgeous. However, I
Mm.
would say my favorite way to play Game Boy Advance games was on the DS Lite. That screen was so good,
Mm.
and you just slot the
Yes.
game in the bottom, but it didn't play any other Game Boy games. So you couldn't play like your original Game Boy games or your Game Boy Color games. They didn't work. It was only Game Boy Advance games. But I still think it was the best way to play GBA games.
And
I've
it
got a
came in pink.
couple Game Boy Advances on me. The
Oh,
blue has gotten to the point where it's like yellow now. Like
That
the
was
back is
wow.
blue. Oh
fine.
my god!
Yeah, this is what it used to look. I have no idea where I left it. It was
It
just like in
must
a
have just been
closet for so long.
It must have been heat or
I,
something.
Or
yeah, yeah.
oxidized.
So it's also got like the wireless adapter that came with Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. So they were playing with the wireless there. This one, the screen's popping off a little. This was my brother's. I'm actually going to get both of these repaired by a friend and get them slightly modded to have like the backlit
That
screens
would be
and
cool.
stuff.
Yeah.
So
The black one was the
yeah.
first one that had the updated screen as well. I remember they did one with like a higher contrast because my brother got the black one and the screen was noticeably better, like less washed out
Wow.
than
Oh
the other one.
man.
But then when you got the SP and there was a light on the thing, it was like, wow, we've suffered through not having a backlight for over a decade.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited to get both of these modded and kind of get them semi back up to date.
Where are you sending them off to someone to do it?
So where I moved, I actually have a friend here who got into modding Game Boy Advances specifically. Maybe he mods other things, but he sent me a message one day and he was like, "Hey, you interested in a Game Boy Advance?" I was like, "I don't know,
Nice.
maybe." And then he showed me what he had going on. I was like, "Oh, they're like awesome." So yeah, I was like, I've got these old shells here that could use some fixing, so I'm gonna have him work on them.
So exciting. I'm pretty jealous over here.
You're gonna have to hook Pete up with custom Game Boy Advance because he's been talking about getting
Oh
one
yeah.
ever since I've known him. He's been talking about getting a Game Boy Advance customized, but
Hmm.
he's never done it. So as soon as he sees yours, I know he's gonna get that FOMO and he's gonna want to get a customized Game Boy Advance.
Yep. Uh, I I don't know. I've been waiting a while to do it because at first I was like, "Oh man, is it kind of expensive?" And but I don't know. It's like $100 or so for
Hmm.
it to be done, which for something that's like basically dead on me, I'm like, "Oh, I could bring it back to life and play this collection of games that I really loved when I was on road trips." So maybe it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I
You
think
still have all the games.
Um, no. I
Oh,
think my brother has some. I have a few of them. So it's the age of childhood where you're sharing everything. So things
yeah.
just get like parsed off to some other place.
And those cardboard boxes, I mean, oh my god, those
Oh
cardboard
yeah,
boxes just got squished. I've still got my
yeah.
WarioWare 4 box from the GPA, and it's like the only one I've got left, and it's just flat. There's nothing left to it. It's really,
Oh.
really sad.
I have one box, one GBA box that's like in good condition, and it's Final Fantasy Tactics. I don't know how it stayed in the condition it's in, but it's on my shelf.
Okay, so I think then we should probably move into some of the games we're really excited to come to the Switch Online. Now, I will preface and say these are the games we wish will come to Nintendo Switch Online, because having looked at the Nintendo Switch Online lineup for NES and SNES, I think it's very unlikely that all of these are coming. Most of mine probably aren't going to make it because they're licensed games, and they don't seem to have a great track record of showing up. But we'll I guess we'll go round and kind of discuss, talk a little bit about what our favorite games were, and touch on a couple of them. Maybe we'll do like one game at a time. So I want to
Does
throw.
it
Oh, what were you gonna say?
is it pretty safe to assume like it's probably going to be both like Game Boy and Game Boy Color? Because
Yes.
I feel like they shared so many games between both systems.
Yeah, so we did actually have a question about that so I can pull it out of the question block. And the question is Game Boy Color considered its own generation of console, or is it just an updated Game Boy? And let me find out who sent that one, and I can't remember off the top of my head. That was from Asobi, sorry. So yeah, is Game Boy Color a new generation of handheld consoles, or was it just a revision of the original Game Boy? Because as you said, Chewy, they shared so much hardware between the consoles. There was very slight changes, and obviously that better screen, the color screen that the Game Boy Color had. But yeah, what do you consider it? Do you consider it a whole new generation?
I feel like it's maybe just like the ultimate or next best version of what came before. I think that era of Nintendo really screams that to me, where it had all the backwards compatibility. So even if you upgraded to this new system, you could play all your old Game Boy games. And I don't think they really got left behind until it kind of went into the Game Boy Advance, especially like the SP when you started having the backlit screens and everything. But even those Game Boys were like, yeah, you can still play all these Game Boy games. And that continued on into the DS. And I don't know, I guess it gets like you can keep adding incrementally. So it's hard to tell when did this change? When did this become something new? To me, I'd say I consider it pretty closely tied with the Game Boy. Like the Game Boy Color and Game Boy are like hand in hand to me.
Yeah, especially when you consider those like black cartridges that worked both
Mm,
on the Game Boy and the
Yeah.
Game Boy Color, like the DX version of Link's Awakening. It was
yeah.
technically a Game Boy Color game because it had the rich color palette, but you could play it on the Game Boy if you wanted to.
Hmm.
I think that's really when you step the cartridges into a new direction, then it's a new console generation or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think the Game Boy Advance is just kind of like, the 1.5 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you about the Game Boy Color, because there's so few dedicated like Game Boy Color cartridges that came on those like
Yeah.
see through cartridges with the bulb at the top,
Hmm.
and I think it's probably most comparable to say the new 3DS. Like, is it technically a new generation, the new 3DS? Because there's a few games that can only work on the new 3DS, but there's very few. Most of them work between all of the consoles. I think it's probably just like that Pro model, the
Yeah.
mid-generation refresh that we've come to expect now, that just happened back then. And it was kind of a stepping stone to get to the Game Boy Advance, which I consider the next generation. It very much feels like going from the NES to the SNES. We went from like 8-bit to 16-bit, going from the
Hmm.
Game Boy to the Game Boy Color, then to the Game Boy Advance.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And that also reminds me the of the GameCube like Game Boy player adapter thing that you could stick on it too. Was that just was that all the Game Boy games or just like Advance? I don't remember.
It,
I
I
never got
think
one.
I think it played all of them. My brother has one on his Game Boy, which is at my parents' house, and I keep meaning to try and steal it. Every time I go,
I'm
I'm just like,
jealous.
I need to take this and just have this, but I'm never gonna
Yeah.
get away with it because if you can get a Game Boy player with that disc, because the disc always goes
hmm
missing, it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because I looked into it and I was like, oh man, the adapter thing is so cheap. Oh wait, you need this disc to it and it's nowhere to be found. Well, I'm out.
I'm fairly certain my parents have the disc at their house as well, so it's got to be somewhere. But that wasn't
hmm
the first time you could play Game Boy games on a home console. You could get the Super Game Boy for the SNES, which basically had an entire Game Boy in the cartridge, and you put it in, and it even had some extra frames around it. So I've got some footage on the YouTube version of Alleyway playing a Super Game Boy, and it has this like frame around it. You get an enhanced color palette, so you got these color features on the Super Game Boy before the Game Boy Color even existed. So they obviously had
Oh,
this plan in place like long before the Game Boy Color came out that they were going to do this like color version.
That's
yeah.
really cool.
That makes me think like people need to like study up on some of these Nintendo things because we always say like, oh, they're so slow on stuff, and I'm like, yeah, they're slow, but we kind of see these changes happening over
Yeah.
time, kind of incrementally, and you can see it just like throughout their history. They're always like, we're playing with this, check it out.
What other examples of that do you like spring to mind?
I guess I think of it a lot in terms of discussions around I guess what people are feeling now with like ports and like remakes and that sort of
Yeah.
thing, especially with like Nintendo, but Nintendo specifically like DLC, like how they're kind of handling that right now. And I don't know, I feel you just look kind of back at what they've done before, where it's like Animal Crossing has had four different versions, like that N64 game, the
Mm.
three different GameCube games. And I'm just like, there's like little changes here and there. And now they're implementing it into how they're doing it live in New Horizons. I don't know. There are little things here and there where I'm just like, Nintendo plays with stuff constantly, and we never know when it's going to happen. It just happens.
Yeah.
So
That,
do you feel like it's oh sorry. Do you
that,
feel like it's their way of like testing the waters kind of and seeing how people are going to react and how the games are going to react and then pushing forward from there?
Yeah, for sure. You know what? A better example. Kind of every single new system they launch, they're like, "Oh, we're not dropping the last system. It's going to keep going." And
mm,
now here we are. The 3DS is dead, and it's been dead long before they haven't even acknowledged it.
Huh.
But
well, yeah,
yeah, like
like
every
they did
console.
that. They did that with the same thing with the Game Boy to the DS transition. It was, oh no, this is
hmm
coming alongside the Game Boy, and we're also releasing a new console, a Game Boy Micro. And they did the same thing with the 3DS. It was like, oh, but the 2DS XL's coming out, so we've not given up on the 3DS family of consoles. It's a very strange thing that they do. It's sort of like they're dipping their toes in. They're not quite
hmm
sure if what they're doing is going to work, so they want this
Yeah.
backup plan.
Yeah, and really relevantly, I feel like that's what's happening with like the OLED Switch that comes out next month. It's
Oh,
like, here's this like new Switch that's got this better screen. We're not quite ready to go 4K and everything with the Switch, but maybe that's happening. You know, all of these things feel like little steps toward
Yeah.
those next consoles.
Okay, right. Let's dip into some games. So, Nina, as our guest, I want to hand it over to you first. So, you've got some like cracking games on your list that I know people consider to be some of the best on the system. So, do you want to walk us through some of your favorites?
yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to lump these first two together if that's all right, but
Yeah.
because I think that they're already on Switch Online. So this is kind of like the muck that you have to walk through with Switch Online is so many of these games have been redone by Nintendo that it even if they're a Game Boy game, if they ever got an update and put on a different system, they could possibly be on Nintendo Online already. So the first two on my list, Super Mario Land and Kirby's Dream Land, are on Nintendo Online. So it may not be the exact Game Boy version, but there is a version of it on there. And these were kind of like the heavy hitters. So like of course me and my brothers had these two because I feel like everybody had these two. So it's like there was such a plethora of these games around that somehow we got our hands on them from friends or neighbors or whoever who had finished it.
And have you played the games on Switch Online, and do they feel like the same game to you, or would it be when you turn on the Game Boy version and you get that like chip tune, and it very much is like your nostalgia is for that version of the game?
Well, okay, so I haven't played these on Nintendo Online yet, but one of my all-time favorite games is Donkey Kong Country 2: Diddy Kong's Quest. And I have played through most of it on Nintendo Online, and it doesn't feel the same to me. I don't know if it's because like somehow the controls are different, or like if the little character slides just a couple pixels more than normal, or I don't know. It just something about it doesn't feel exactly the same to me. So it almost makes me just want to go back and play them on the systems. Like Chewie's still got all his old ones. I don't know.
A lot of people like consider the only way to play these games, and the emulation just never hits the spot. You know, I know a bunch of people that even have CRTs still hooked up because they feel that you just can't emulate the way it looks properly on an LCD display.
It's bizarre. It's hard to put your finger on it, and it might be the display, it might be the controls, or I don't know, sometimes the music sounds just a little bit different. But, at least we're trying.
It
At
could
least they're there.
be it could be that there is like a slight delay with the inputs too.
Mm,
There is like the frame perfect feature on those, but even then, it's like it's not perfect. You're lying to me.
yeah. And you've got that muscle memory in your hands. You know how to beat these levels like perfectly because that's what you did over and over and over as a child. So as soon
Mhm.
as you start in again, and you fall down a hole you never fall down, or you miss a jump or whatever, or I don't know, crocodile comes in a little bit later than it should, it just feels, I don't know, it feels like a dream almost.
It's sort of like it feels a little bit like a rip-off version. You know, it's
Yeah.
not quite right.
Yeah.
It's almost there. It's like at the uncanny valley, like you're
Yes.
99% there, but then this one thing just doesn't feel right. It's almost as if, Mario jumped and like the physics was off. He wasn't,
Yes.
he didn't like have the same sense of gravity that he has. You would know instantly that something felt wrong, and it didn't feel like a Mario game.
Hmm.
And I think you can definitely you can definitely understand that if you ever played like a wonky clone or something like that.
How can you compete? It's tricky.
What about you, Chewy? What's some of the top ones on your list?
So this one is, I don't think it was on any other consoles outside of the Game Boy. So I have to mention it, and I spent so long playing this game, but it's called Motocross Maniacs or Motocross Maniacs. I always put an extra R in the middle there. This game, I remember so many people talking about what's the Excite Bike and stuff, and I was like,
It
what are you
looks
guys talking
so
about?
much like a site bite. It really does.
I was like, what game are you guys talking about? It's Motocross Maniacs. Your title's all wrong here. It took me years before I found out they were actually just different games. But Motocross Maniacs, what I liked about it is just like I forget, something like 9 or so different stages or courses, and they all have different little challenges like speed times to get, and they were really interesting. They had all these weird jumps and loops hanging in midair and all sorts of things. But I would play that game so long in the car, just trying to get as high as possible in the levels. And I was basically just competing with myself the whole time. But it was a game where, I don't know, this happens with a lot of like kind of older arcadey era games where they're very difficult because a lot of the game design at first was really just meant to eat your quarters, but this one it shared that aspect. But like after a while, I was like, oh, okay, I understand how this works. And it just felt really good getting better and better at the game. I was just like, man, I remember when I couldn't even land a jump in this thing. And now I'm just like, look at me.
It's just eating your double A's instead.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I went through so many.
You know, the game that reminds me of, which I haven't put on my list, but did you guys ever play Wave Race on the Game Boy?
Yes. No,
I
not on
never
the
Or
Game
played
Boy.
it on
Yeah.
those.
or an
No.
N64?
Yeah, on
Yeah,
N64.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I had. Well, my dad had Wave Race on the original Game Boy, the Game Boy Pocket, and I loved that game. It was so good. Um, and again, it's that the black and white 8-bit, you know, just racing on water. It's like barely looks like water, but and the noise, the sound, it's just the terrible hissing noise because it's just meant to replicate water coming out of the speaker, and it's obviously not got much to do it with. But I loved that game. I thought it was great.
That's awesome.
So next on your list, too, you've got Bubble Bobble.
Yeah, Bubble Bobble. This is one that I played more in like arcades. One thing that I really liked about those trips to Mexico was there was still like a pretty large arcade culture there. And so a lot of the times I'd find myself just there was one literally on the corner of the block where my uncles lived.
Yeah.
So I'd be there all the time. And Bubble Bobble was a big one for me there. The Game Boy one looks it looks seizure inducing.
Oh no.
With all the bubbles and stuff, it's just kind of a funny effect they have to make it look like a bubble, you know? But yeah, I liked those games. It was kind of like I don't know. I think these games have different names in the UK. Here it's called Super Bust a Move, but I think over there it's called like Puzzle Bobble, where it was basically those ones where you shoot the balloon bubbles up and they match the colors, and once you get like
Oh.
four, they'd all break and knock things down. It's those two characters, Bub and Bob, and it's more of a platformer type of game. So you just kind of like go through these courses, you blow bubbles, the enemies get caught, run into them, and they pop and die. It's cute, but yeah, that was basically that game, and it kind of came back recently with the Switch. There's a new Bubble Bobble game on there, and I think they have like the classic arcade version of it on that too. I haven't bought it yet, but I've been tempted to pick it up.
And the classic arcade one is a platformer like this as well, or is it the puzzle
Yeah.
one? Okay.
Yeah, it's not the Puzzle Bobble. It's more like this platformer Bubble Bobble. It gets confusing.
Oh, that's cool. So one of the ones on mine, which is probably a very strange one. I don't know if either of you are a fan of James Bond.
Yeah, yeah.
I might have seen all of the movies.
So there was a James Bond game on the original Game Boy. It was called 007 James Bond, and you're on this mission, and it is like a Zelda game, but you play as
Oh.
James Bond, and you're walking around in this action RPG, and you're talking to people, and you're doing all sorts of stuff. There's a point when you go to all sorts of different places. At one point, you end up in Marrakesh, and you're playing in the casino, and you've got to beat someone at Baccarat. And I never got past that point as a kid because I did not know how to play Baccarat, and I still don't know how to play Baccarat. And I've never gone back and finished this game. But I remember walking around so many times, just wandering around, wondering what to do. And I feel like if this game came to Switch, I would finish it, and I would be able to read a walkthrough and finally finish this game because it was so fun to play this style and this format of game, these like top-down RPGs that's using a non-fantasy setting and theme. Like you're a spy, you're in the modern day. It's not the traditional like, oh, here's a sword and you need this, that, and the other. You've got a gun and you're shooting people or you're beating them up. You know, it's James Bond and you've got these gadgets and things, and it's a really fun idea for a game because when you think of Zelda, what do? You go through all these dungeons, you get new items, and that gives you new skills. Well, in James Bond, you get new gadgets, and they give you new skills. Like you get the watch, which essentially is like the hook shot, you know, because it shoots out cable from his watch and things like that. So it works. It doesn't sound like it should work, but it works, and it was a really good game.
That sounds like a that also sounds like a cool blend because you just don't see too many like top-down shooters like that either.
Yeah.
No.
Both worlds are blending in a way that you don't see them, and that has me really interested because I've always really liked things like Robotron, where it's just like top-down shooter, but it's massive amounts of enemies and also designed to steal all your quarters, so it's difficult. But something like that seems like, oh, this seems like an actual digestible game for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever play Hotline Miami, Chewy?
You know what? I didn't. But that's kind of the vibe I got from it, and I was like, "Why haven't I played this? This
Yeah,
seems
I
cool."
feel like you would like it if you like that.
It's amazing. I mean, when I think of 007 games, I just think of that one. What was it? N64, where it's like all the hallways and
Oh,
it's like,
GoldenEye?
GoldenEye,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So good,
Where like I would
yeah.
always accidentally like karate chop someone when I'm trying to shoot one. I was terrible at that game. So top down sounds like way more fun, actually.
You know, I go back and play GoldenEye, and I just can't play it because the main thing that gets me is the inverted y-axis, and I just can't do
Yeah.
it. I just can't do
Yeah.
it.
hmm
So you're in the same camp as me then, both of you. Like you are not inverting anything when you play games.
Mm-mm.
I'm just kind of bad at first-person shooters.
What says the Splatoon player in the
That's
hundreds?
third person.
Oh,
I
I guess
guess
that's true.
that's third person, but it's also kind of like I need motion controls at this point. I can't do like twin sticks. I can't do
Okay.
whatever the N64 did before. I don't know how people could control that anymore.
I'd be so curious to see you play Doom on the Switch, which is first person but has motion controls, so you can just aim with gyro. I think
Oh,
you'd probably be
Mhm.
pretty good at it.
I might give it a go. Yeah.
very cool.
So Nina, let's get back to your list. You've got some other games that are on the Game Boy, and then we'll touch on games from other platforms that we hope will come to Switch Online as well.
Sounds good.
So Pipe Dream isn't something I've heard of, but when I saw when I saw the footage,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm sure I've played this or something similar to this.
Okay, because it came installed like with Windows. So it was not only on Game Boy, but it was also like just on computers at that time. Which it's so much fun. It's like a weird take on Tetris. And you've got to like move, you get like these pipe sections given to you. And sometimes it's like a T section or a cross section or just a straight bar. And you have to try and get like the water from one part of the screen to another. It looks strangely like Minesweeper, but it's just like this really fun little puzzle game that almost reminds me kind of like mobile games nowadays, where it's
Yeah.
just like mindless fun. I guess Tetris is in that category too, but this game was so simple and so perfect for the Game Boy that like I can remember playing games like this during swim meets, like in between like my turn to go race other children. And this is what you just play to waste time. It was awesome.
Oh, that's so fun. So I don't know if you've seen this game, Chewy, but have you ever played BioShock? And it's like it very much reminds me of the hacking puzzle in BioShock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember watching you play that. I think you streamed it, and I was like, oh, I kind of like these little pipe puzzle things that are going on. And that was exactly what it was reminding me of. I'm watching the footage now, too. This this is a game I would definitely be too obsessed with.
Yeah, that's the problem with it. So, Stephen, do you think that you recognize it from like Microsoft
Yeah,
or
from
is it just
Windows.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was another one on Windows, which was you push a load of blocks around, and you had to get the person out of the room by pushing these blocks. I can't remember
Um,
what that was called, but I adored that game.
Chips Challenge.
Yes,
Is
it
that it?
was. I absolutely loved that game, and
I did too.
I had something similar to it on GPA called Denki Blocks,
Ooh.
which was like you move blocks and you move the blocks and you get like you finish the puzzle. I
Hmm.
loved that game as well. I hope that comes to Switch Online if GBA
That
games
would be
ever come to
amazing.
Switch.
I feel like Chip's Challenge got me ready for Pokemon gym puzzles where like especially the ice puzzles where you have to like slide and hit blocks and make it into a certain spot. I was like, "Oh, I've got this. I've done this since I was a child."
That's perfect.
Do you want me to keep going on the list or are we going to switch out?
Let's switch out because you've only got 2 left on yours. I'll talk about
Hmm.
Road Rash. Have either of you played Road Rash? So
No.
this is a motorbike game, and it's been on basically every platform ever. And this was great on the Game Boy. You basically race down a road, and you're doing like illegal street racing on motorbikes, and you can like punch people off. I had it on Windows as well. It was so good. Or then you would fall off your bike, and you'd have to run to go get your bike again. The problem I had
What?
with this game, it only works on the original Game Boy. It's one of the very,
Oh,
very few games that
Oh.
is not compatible with Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, or on the DS. You can only
hmm.
play it on an original Game Boy. So the only time we can play this game is on my dad's Game Boy Pocket, and we're not going to go back and do that. So if this comes to Switch, I will be very happy because I'll be able to play this game for the first time in about 20 years because I haven't played it since I played on my dad's Game Boy Pocket back in like 2000. So I'm very much hoping that Road Rash comes to Switch.
Would be
Their
really
little
cool.
arms sticking out to punch
Yeah.
people is great. I
Oh,
love
it's
it.
so funny, yeah. You have to like avoid the cars, and there's like no
Yeah.
detail whatsoever. The mountains in the background never get any closer. You never manage to get there.
I love the side view mirrors that they've got on the bottom half. That's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool, right? And like the
Yeah.
speed and it's the punching bit. The punching was just so funny when you just punch people off. It's vicious, truly vicious. But
It
when
is.
the computer does it to you, it's just like, oh, are you joking?
That's incredible. I need to play this.
I would have loved this. I was a big like pole position fan, so this gives
Mhm.
me those vibes for sure.
Yeah, EA still owns the rights to this game, so EA should make a new Road Rash at some point as well because I love Road
Interesting.
Rash. It's a great game. I'm very curious, Chewy, about the next one on your list because I
Okay.
never had this. And is this gonna work on the Switch? There's gonna need to be some serious like
You know,
emulation stuff, right?
I thought about it for a second, and I think it might. So this game is Kirby Tilt and Tumble, and basically what was really unique about it, I used to play it a lot more on my Game Boy Advance, I think, but you would put the cartridge in, and the cartridge had kind of like a gyroscopic thing, so you can actually move the game, and it would tilt Kirby in a direction. So you'd tilt forward,
What?
Kirby would be rolling that way, you'd tilt back. And that was basically how you controlled the entire game. You would take Kirby, tilt your Game Boy, and move it around. And that game was so much fun. It was really difficult because, not much motion controls in that era of
No.
gaming.
Yeah, I'm
So
blown away.
honestly, though, like, all of the Switch controllers have gyro, at least like the Nintendo one. So I'm like, I think it might be able to work. And I guess I debate with myself whether it'll be better or not, just because part of tilting your whole Game Boy is like you got to move with it and to look at the screen, keep checking
Yeah.
it out. So there's that part, but I'm like, well, is that better, or would it just like a stationary screen be better for this, or I don't know. So I'd be interested to see what would happen
So it
with that.
sounds like it's a little bit like the motion puzzles in Zelda Breath of the Wild,
I was about to
Yeah,
and
say,
yeah.
we played this game. It was just inside of Breath of the Wild.
yeah, and I absolutely sucked at those puzzles. Every time I saw that little sphere thing, I was like, "Oh no, I really don't want to do this. I'm just
Hmm.
gonna come back to this shrine later." I cheated on one of the puzzles. I flipped the controller upside down and I put the
Hmm.
ball on the back so I didn't have to go through the marble run.
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely agree with you though but I kind of feel that this game would work best with the stationary screen and the just moving the controller, so you can always see the screen and you can better adjust. I don't know. What do you
Hmm.
think, Nina? Did you play those puzzles on Breath of the Wild, and were you would you think you would be better off holding the console or moving the controller?
They were honestly my least favorite part of Breath of the Wild.
Me too.
Um, and I feel like if I was playing handheld, then I saw that puzzle was coming up, then I would switch, to console for it because it was too like again, you're like upside down on the couch trying to figure out how to get that ball into the right spot.
Hmm.
I
And
honestly had no clue that the Game Boy could do that. I
Yeah,
My
this
mind is
one
blown.
it was specifically like a Game Boy Color game. It
Okay.
was a nice bright pink cartridge, see through and everything. I still have it somewhere. I don't know. Um, but I also think like the Breath of the Wild ones are difficult. I found them very difficult to
Mm,
do and control and everything. But I think it was also because there's kind of like you're looking at a platform within the game. So it's like it feels different in Kirby Tilt and Tumble because your whole world is that. So it doesn't feel like there's a disconnect that makes it harder to envision how you're going to move the platform. So for me, it worked better in
interesting.
Kirby than it did in Zelda.
That's really cool. I'm wow.
I also
I
wonder
had a
if
lot of fun with it.
I wonder if the console size has something to do with it as well, because tilting a
Maybe.
tiny little Game
Mhm.
Boy is going to be a lot easier than a slab that the Nintendo
Yeah,
Switch is. So I wonder if that has a factor
yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm realizing like we could try both versions, like just play with your Joy-Con and handheld and,
Hmm.
see how it tilts like that and then just put it on your TV and see what you like better.
They've got to add this.
It's amazing. I would love it if they did.
So before I throw it back over to you, Nina, I want to touch on one of mine, which I feel like is a little bit of a cheat, and I kind of want to check with you too if it is a cheat, which
I've
is
got some cheats coming up. It's okay.
Game and Watch Gallery 3, because while it is a game on the Game Boy, it's really a collection of a bunch of old games, and I can't decide if I want on say like an anniversary of the Game and Watch, just a Game and Watch app on there rather than it being a
Mm.
ROM within the Game Boy app. Whether I just want to be able to go, I want to play Game and Watch, and then I open up Chef, and it's either the modern version of Chef or the retro version of Chef.
These look so cute. I want it to count.
Yeah, I loved these games. I spent more time on this, and I think it's because of like you were saying, Nina, the whole simple, casual, like a mobile game, like Pipe Dream. It's
Mm-hmm.
just something you open up and it just kills like 10, 15 minutes while you're waiting for the bus or you're waiting for, the next class or something.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the best kind of like small handheld games in my eyes. That's how I most enjoy like little handheld games, and mobile
Yeah.
gaming has totally taken that over.
Mhm.
These are cute.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it, and how did it control? Like, how did it translate from like a Game and Watch to a Game Boy?
So it would depend on the game, but most of them will either let you use the D-pad or the A and B buttons, because
Hmm.
some Game and Watch had a D-pad. Is actually where the D-pad was invented for, and some only had A and B buttons, and obviously the ones with the A and B buttons, some of them the A and B buttons was just like a left and right. So on Chef, you would like move it from your left hand to your right hand, so you could either press A and B to swap from like your left hand to your right hand, or you could use the
Hmm.
D-pad to do the same thing. But each game gave you you would go into the game and it would have like a little instruction set as to how you play this game, what you've got to do, and you could choose between like the modern version or the classic version, which with the classic version was just like I don't know, 1 bit black and white. It's either on or off state, because it was actually on like a calculator screen originally on the Game and Watch, and then they remade all of these for the Game and Watch Gallery games. There's a bunch of Game & Watch Gallery games. I've got the one on the Game Boy Color, and I've got one on the Game Boy Advance. But they did DS versions of these games, but they were exclusively My Nintendo Rewards or Club Nintendo Rewards back then, and they are impossible to find. Like if you can find one, it's not cheap. So I love the Game & Watch games, and I really hope if we don't get them on Game Boy Color or Game Boy when they come over, that we eventually get them as their own collection, because the Game & Watch games deserve to be preserved because they're really, really fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Especially like they could also just bring it back. Bring your Game & Watch with the Game & Watch collection on there. That'd be awesome.
Oh, like a mini
would be
Game & Watch?
cool.
That would be really cool, yeah.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got the Zelda one coming out soon. We had that Mario one recently. So
Neither of which had original Game & Watch games, which is what's so wild to me. I would love some of the original ones. Like Chef for me is my favorite. I really would love an original copy of Chef as the Game & Watch. I loved that game.
yeah, that's cool.
These are all so cute. Tamagotchi just came out with a watch, so maybe Nintendo will. So cool.
So Nina, you've got one of my, the original Atari game is one of my all-time favorite games. Is next on your list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I loved
Paperboy?
this game. Yeah, I loved Paperboy. It was fantastic.
I loved it. So I think that we had Paperboy too, if I'm remembering correctly. And we also had this on the SNES later too, which always scared me because there were like zombies and things. But
Really?
yeah, it got dark pretty quick once it was on the SNES. There's like vampire homes and graves and stuff too, but Paperboy, this one was good too, but it was like you were saying earlier with the James Bond. Like there was a point in this game when I was little where I just couldn't get any further.
Yeah.
So I could play like the first few levels or neighborhoods, and then I just had to stop. Which is a little sad. I think about kids nowadays doing the same things. I wonder which games and like how far they get on it. But Paperboy was so good. I loved it. And I mean, we were like bike kids growing up. We were always on our bikes and riding around the neighborhood and stuff. So this was just like, more bike fun, which is the best.
And you got to throw newspapers through people's windows, which was always really fun.
Yeah, that's why I think this one had so much like replayability, because you could try and get them in the mailboxes and be a good paper, just wasn't as much fun.
No, it was nowhere near as much fun. Yeah.
No.
I genuinely had no idea this was on Game Boy. I really hope this comes to Switch Online, because I mean, I don't know if this is available, because I think there are some Atari games on there. I had Paperboy as part of a PlayStation 1 Atari collection, which was the original Paperboy arcade game, along with Gauntlet and a bunch of other games. But Gauntlet and Paperboy were the two that me, my brother, and my sister always played when we were kids. I love Paperboy. It's a fantastic game.
So I looked it up. I didn't see it, but I'm hoping that if they do add it, they could also add the SNES one, because it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have the SNES app there, and they keep adding the worst games.
They could add Paperboy, and everyone would be happy.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting to the point where I wouldn't mind if they just charged for some of the games. Like some of the games I really want, if you can't bring them over for free, just make us pay like 99 pence or, £2, £5, whatever it is. Like, why is Chrono Trigger still not available on the Switch? It's madness. Anyway, Nina, I'm saving this one because I feel like we need to talk about this one a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna fire it back over to you, because there's a game here I've never ever heard of, and I feel like I'm gonna do disservice to it because Pete's not here to talk about it. So I'm gonna fire it over to you to tell me what about this game.
Yeah, so both of the next two of mine kind of fall along the same vein. They're both TCG games, and the first one, I mean, obviously Pokemon trading card game. It's basically like height of Pokemon. Kids are collecting cards. They're playing the games on their Game Boys and everything. But why not mix them both? It takes the Pokemon trading card game. It lets you buy packs, build decks, fight off gym leaders and everything. It's really
Yes.
cool. It's one that's actually available on the 3DS eShop if you want to check it out. It's pretty cheap. It's like, I don't know, $6 or $7 or something. And I bought it recently and played through and beat the story and everything. But what I love about TCG like video games, especially in those old days, my parents never bought me like Pokemon cards, trading cards, any sort of thing like that. Like if I had to save up from doing like odd jobs here and there to get any of those. So getting these games, it was just like finally I can open a pack of Pokemon cards. It's this digital little pack, but I don't care. It's mine and I love it. And so my next game kind of falls along that same vein. Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Duel Stories. It's not a good game. it's, I mean, I remember loving it, but I also remember it being really weird and confusing, like on screen to control and everything. But the cool feature that it had was every Yu-Gi-Oh card that you got, like a physical card, had a code on it, and you could enter those codes into the game
Oh,
and
wow.
get your cards from real life into
What?
That
that.
is so cool. So that's like the precursor of what Pokemon's doing now, where you can take the trading cards
Yeah.
Yeah.
online. But back in
Uh-huh.
what, the 90s?
Yeah, that was it was a Game Boy. It might have been a Game Boy Color game. I think it might have been a Game Boy Color game. But yeah, that was that basically. The thing that Pokemon doesn't quite do that this game does though is that like you actually get the exact card for the code you're putting in. And whereas Pokemon now, the online, they have their own little code cards, and what you get from those doesn't really reflect what you got in the pack that you
Well,
just
that's a
got.
shame. So it's
Yeah,
like another
so
random selection you get online if you put the code in. Okay.
exactly. So it's all random, but like Yu-Gi-Oh changed the game there and I don't think the game has ever gone back to that. But yeah, it was really fun playing those TCG games just because they were so much more expensive to get into. Like, I don't know, you pay $30 for a Game Boy game or $30 for what, 5 packs of cards. That won't build a deck for you.
The art for these Pokemon look like the old cards.
Yeah, they're like the base set card arts.
This
I
is
think
so cool.
I think they have the jungle set in there. They have like a couple, maybe a few sets of the like first Pokemon cards that came out. So it's really cool to go back to it. And you played on your 3DS, and I'm just like, I want more people to see it on the Switch too. That'd be fun.
Yeah, this
It's
needs to
really
definitely
cool.
needs to come to Switch. And if it doesn't come like in its original form, this needs remaking because it's such a cool
Yeah.
concept. And I feel like you could
Hmm.
do so much more with it now as a trading
Yeah.
card game. The problem is I feel like this would be most suited to mobile. And I feel like they would
Mm.
then make it like in-app purchases. You buy an actual
Yeah.
booster pack and all of that stuff. I feel like that's the way this would go as a modern game. It sort of feels like this. You don't get this kind of game. I didn't even know this kind of thing existed. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
really cool.
this is the age of link cables too, so I think you could actually like play against your friends and stuff. So if they added that type of feature, because a lot of the like the NES and SNES apps right now do let you play those two-player modes, and I'm just like, oh man,
Hmm.
imagine being able to connect on your Game Boys and duel each other, play a round of Pokemon, whatever. It'd be cool.
Oh yeah, no, it would be. Did you ever play this with like link cable? Did either of you ever use link cables? I feel like I missed out. I never had a link cable, and I never ever used the IR feature on the Game Boy Color either. Did either of you use that?
I had 3 link cables because
Of course.
the game there were specifically like the Game Boy Advance ones because you could do up to 4 players, but you needed 3 of them for it to actually happen. They
Okay.
had basically a wire, a little box in the middle of the wire where you could plug in another link cable and then add somebody else. And then off of that link cable, you'd have to then plug in another link cable to add that fourth
Oh my
person.
gosh.
So it was complicated for sure, but that was something I did a lot with. I think it was Bomberman Tournament. I think I'd mentioned this game to you before. It was a Game Boy Advance game,
Yeah.
and the single player was like unlike any other Bomberman. It was like a monster gathering RPG type of game, but the multiplayer was like regular Bomberman blowing each other up and stuff. So I played a lot of that.
Wow. But yeah, that's it's crazy that this all of these kind of things came to the Game Boy. Do you know, I'm realizing I had so few games on the Game Boy that there is just a whole collection out there that I could be tapping into. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping for when it finally does come to Switch. I'm just going to quickly blast through my final three, one of which I actually played, the other two I didn't. There, so I played Tomb Raider on the Game Boy Color, which crazily had a Tomb Raider port. So this is just a standard platformer, 2D platformer. It's unrelated to any other Tomb Raider game, but you play Lara Croft and you run around and you're raiding tombs, and it was just fun. I love Tomb Raider on the PlayStation 1, and to be able to have like a version of it on the go, even though it was a very different game, was fun. I kind of think this was a little bit of a Metroidvania, if I remember correctly, but I'm not 100% sure. In any case, I loved this game. And then,
Art is awesome.
sorry, what were you saying, Nina?
Sorry, the art looks awesome.
Yeah, it's the screen on the Game Boy really did this game a disservice on the Game Boy Color screen. It didn't look too great, if I'm honest, because there was no backlight and you really couldn't see that thing. Everything just looked
Yeah.
like one tone. But looking at the footage on, we're playing some YouTube long play, and it really is so detailed and colorful, and the sprites just look great. It really is a good looking game. Sadly, I feel like this is one of those games that's not going to come to the Switch because it's Tomb Raider and because that license is still making games now, and it is still a popular franchise. I just don't see it coming. Which leads me on to my next game, which, did either of you know there was a Grand Theft Auto game on the Game Boy Color? Because
No.
I certainly did not. But apparently GTA 2 came to the Game Boy Color, and I think it's just it's a faithful remake of the PS1 game on Game Boy Color, which is just wild to me. And it's unsurprising I had no idea this existed, because what responsible parent is buying their 6 or 7-year-old GTA for the Game Boy Color? It's not going to happen. But man, like, it's a
Look at
perfect setting
it.
for it, because it's top down, like the first two
Yeah.
GTAs were. You walk around, you get your missions, you get your cars, and you go around the place. It would have been so cool to have this on the go, and it's another one of those ones I just had no idea existed.
This
Oh
is
my
amazing.
gosh. It almost reminds me of, like, in a strange way, Oregon Trail. The way that you can, like, see the bullets flying at you. It's like when you're hunting in Oregon Trail and you can, like, follow your bullets.
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy.
That's what the bullets are like in this, and that's what the top down shooting is like in the James Bond game as well, where you see the see the
Really?
bullets
That's
moving.
so cool.
It's like a 1 by 1 pixel that moves across the
Yeah.
screen.
It's incredible. I want to play this.
Yeah, well
I
then
love it. I would play it for sure.
I
Yeah.
found out there was a Resident Evil game on the Game Boy Color as well, Resident Evil Gaiden. Again, had no
Oh.
idea. And then, friend of the show, Ray, pointed me to a cancelled 3D Resident Evil port for the GBA, which is just wild. And I'll have to find a link for it. I'll get Ray to post it in the Discord, because it's insane that they were like trying to bring the original Resident Evil to the GBA, but the fact that there was a Resident Evil on the Game Boy Color is madness, absolute madness.
Yeah. This is like
This looks
Nintendo
incredible.
trying out different genres before they figured out who they wanted to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is. I think it was like, we've got this Resident Evil brand, and we want to get something on the Game Boy, but we obviously can't bring the game that we've got at the moment. So we'll stick the Gaiden title on it. And I think the logic behind it was probably they wanted it to be like Ninja Gaiden or something. I don't know. It's like, they know that moniker, slap it together. But this looks like a Metroidvania. You're wandering around the place. You're trying to find, bits and pieces and passes and all sorts of stuff to get to where you need to go. And there's some zombie stuff in there, but let's be honest, it's not really survival horror because you're not exactly going to get scared to death by a zombie coming to eat you or when it's like a blob.
I mean, Nina will.
It's true.
Are zombie games not your thing?
I just scare easily.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I love this, but I think this is just like a product of the 90s for sure. It was just the most violent time in our lives. So that's when you saw like the height of Mortal Kombat coming to Nintendo consoles and stuff. So I don't know.
Rip the spines out.
Yeah, but the Nintendo version was like toned down compared to the Genesis, where you had real like red blood. I think the blood on the SNES was green, or there just was no blood at all. It was bizarre the things they like toned down then, because there was no like ESRB or PEGI or any of that stuff, was there?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a weird time, but yeah, I'm surprised that any of these were on the Game Boy. These are all new games as far as I'm concerned.
For real.
Mm-hmm. So, Chuy, I want to pass it over to you for your last one, and then we'll round up with Nina's final actual Game Boy game before we move into some of the games. Like, just briefly touch on before we wrap up what games we would love to come on other platforms, because there was that rumor that potentially there's going to be other retro platforms coming. Just like what platforms we'd like, and then we'll close out the show. We did have another topic like we were going to touch on, but we've gone way long on the Game Boy stuff, so I think we're going to have Nina on again another week to go through that one.
Yeah, for sure. So my last one is Mario Tennis, and this was I don't remember Game Boy Color, one of those two, but this is basically like the game for people who want like a sports RPG type of thing. We've seen it kind of come back through things like Golf Story, and people are waiting for Sports Story now, but this felt like you got stats, you've got challenges, you've got all these really cool worlds that you're walking through, and you're talking to characters and stuff and learning about them, and then you can play tennis against Mario. That's awesome. So yeah, like Mario Tennis, it's one that I also spent a lot of time with. Specifically, there's like these wall challenges where you're just hitting a tennis ball against the wall, and you have to hit like targets on there, and the goal is to get like 100 or something. And I spent so many hours just trying and failing and trying and failing that challenge. But this is a game that I loved growing up. I didn't own it until I downloaded it on 3DS. It's another one that you can get on 3DS. So recommend you pick it up if you have a 3DS. But this is one I borrowed from a friend, and I had so much trouble giving it back to him. I was like, I know I can beat this. Let me just one more week.
So you did give it back to him, unlike your other friend's Game Boy, which you just somehow kept and never ever gave back.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually, I had to give it back, and it was a sad day. But now I have been able to relive it at least a little bit on the 3DS. So,
how does it compare to the Switch version?
The Switch version, I'd say it feels like a different game. I'd say that I'd much prefer the story of this like Game Boy one. The Switch one, it's like fine. They did their story mode thing. You kind of go to each stage. You've got a challenge and everything. But this one, like, it has a hub world, which I think is kind of key to give you that like RPG world, So I don't know. I feel like I like this one a little bit better. I kind of hope they go that direction, and we've kind of seen it go that direction with Mario Golf. Mario Golf kind of lets you run around and talk to all these little Mario characters and get some tips and stuff. So it's going there, but I don't know. They haven't quite nailed it yet, like this game did.
Yeah. Yeah, looking at this game, it looks very much like a golf story. It's got that similar style. You're going around, you're talking to people. I kind of feel though that Golf Story nailed that so well with its
It
charm
did.
that
Yeah.
I don't know, but maybe they can. Maybe Sports Story is gonna replicate that because obviously it's by the same people. It will have that that tennis element in there. Maybe you feel like
Yeah.
you won't need it, but there's always appeal when you can fight against Mario or in my case Toadette.
Yeah, and I definitely want to praise Golf Story for nailing it a lot better than Nintendo kind of has in their last iterations of their sports games. So yeah, I'm stoked for Sports Story and definitely had a lot of fun with Golf Story.
These characters are adorable. You're just like playing against normal people until you have to eventually play against Mario.
Yeah, that's kind of it. There's a whole cast of characters that kind of train you up to those games against the Mushroom Kingdom crew.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. Well, I think then the final game on Nina's list, I think really just sums up the Game Boy as a whole.
Yeah.
I feel like anyone that was into puzzle games and handheld consoles had this game, and it's like gotta be probably the most popular game on the Game Boy, the best seller, and I will be surprised if it doesn't come to Switch Online because I think this specific version really epitomizes this game for a lot of people.
Totally agree. So it's Tetris. It's just plain old Tetris. I cannot get into Tetris 99 or whatever it is that they have on the Switch right now. I just want my plain old Tetris. And I want the same music that was on it from before, and I want it to go on forever. Like this was another one of those games, like I was saying about Pipe Dream, where it just went on, and it was the perfect time waster. You could play it on the bus on the way to school or whenever. It was easy to take turns with someone. Like if you're fighting with your brothers over what to play, Tetris is a pretty easy one. I mean, who has not played Tetris? I want to know.
Yeah, I feel like everyone who has played video games really should have played Tetris if they haven't. And I think for like I was saying, for most people, I feel like this is the version of Tetris that they remember and associate with the game. That like music and the specific like chip version of that music very much is Tetris for a lot of people, and I feel like getting that on the Switch with the same like multiple shades of grey that you got with the original Game Boy, they will make a lot of people happy. Plus, they've made a lot of changes to kind of to Tetris since this game released. You have ghost tiles at the bottom now, so you can see where you are and things like that. Those aren't here, so like the rules of Tetris have kind of changed a little bit, and I wonder if this is going to become, a little bit of, oh, I'm so cool, look at me, I can play with the classic Tetris rules.
Yeah, and I can hear that music to this day, just in my head. It just it can loop and loop and loop. And I guess remind me. I seem to remember when you were on the title screen, you could like click select or something, and it had like 3 different tracks, right?
Yeah.
That you could flip through. I love that.
No
I
idea.
was just like, yeah, I think while you were on the title screen, you could just hit that button and it would change it. And you're just like, oh man, we got some different flavors going on here. But all of them were classic. And kind of going back to that one too, like, I don't know. I think every single Tetris game I pick up, no matter which one it is, it just feels different.
Yeah.
Like that original Game Boy one just feels like Tetris, whereas the other ones, there's just like something slightly different about it that it just doesn't have that same movement. And I mean, it might not be wrong because I mean, obviously players are getting better and better at the game with these newer versions and everything, but it just doesn't feel quite as right as that original version.
It doesn't need anything else. It's fine the way it is. I guess that's not a good way to look at things, but and all of those soundtracks that you could choose at the beginning of the game were all still like I would come to find later in my life like classical music, like usually classical Russian music, which
Hmm.
like had no idea that this game was introducing me to like actual music. Yeah, I mean, and I'm watching like some gameplay right now. It just that's all I need in life is this like nice simplicity right here.
Yeah, because isn't the title screen kind of like, is that Moscow? Like little 8-bit version of Moscow with all those
Yeah.
buildings and stuff.
It's the palace. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one with the. It always reminds me
Oh,
of, and
St. Basil's.
it reminds me of Disney World, like it's like kind of
Oh,
Disney
yeah,
Castle or something.
Hmm.
yeah.
I think it's St. Basil's
I
Cathedral.
think it's
Well, and
the
it's
is it or is it the Kremlin? I don't know.
oh, maybe. But it
Yeah.
says original concept design and program by Alexei Pizitnov.
It's nice
If
to know
that's how
he's
you say his
credited
name.
because this game
Yeah.
basically has nothing to do with him anymore, and it's quite a sad story. I think most people know the story of Tetris, how he came up with it, and then it basically got stolen and taken off of him because
Mm.
of how Russia was managed back then.
Hmm. But at least it gives some backstory to the classical music and to the architecture.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's lost all of its Russian theming since then, which I think is
Hmm.
kind of a little bit sad. It's just gone. You know what Tetris is. You see that little Tetris T Tetronimo, and all of the colors and the music that goes with it. But it's like not the original. I don't know where that came from, the modern Tetris, because it certainly
Yeah.
wasn't from the Nintendo versions. Because the NES version of Tetris had similar Russian music and Russian theming as well.
Hmm.
I wonder if the Cold War that kind of that to bed. It's like
Possibly.
kind of, this Russia's not really selling it anymore.
That'd be a great history story.
That would be.
It would be, yeah.
Yeah, we should do some research on that for sure.
So before we wrap up the show, I'm curious as to. So Tom Phillips at Eurogamer said that they've heard that other retro platforms are also on the cards for the Switch Online service, which I am absolutely just 100% over the moon about, because one of the best things about the Wii Virtual Console was the fact that you had systems outside of Nintendo available. So you had the Sega Master System, the Genesis. There was
Hmm.
the Turbo Graphics on there. Had a bunch of the old Hudson Soft games on the Turbo Graphics. There was a ton of systems that Nintendo didn't control that were available on the Virtual Console, and were on the Virtual Console on the 3DS and on the Wii U, and then we lost that when it came to the Switch. So I'm hoping that these other retro platforms also include non-Nintendo systems. However, I
That would
would
be
also
really
love
cool.
GBA, and I'm curious as to what systems you that have an affinity with.
I think I feel like the one that we're gonna see is probably like the Neo Geo stuff, since we've already seen them put so many of their games just on the platform in general. It just seems like
Yeah.
let's maybe they'll come out with some collection kind of thing. And because I don't know, I feel like Nintendo's been chummy with them, just seeing so many games of theirs already.
No, that's a really good call. I also think, though, like I was saying before, I kind of feel like a Game and Watch thing would be cool, or even like a
Mm,
Nintendo um, arcade
yeah.
collection, like Donkey Kong, and I mean that's the only Nintendo arcade game I can think of off the top of my head, but there's got to be others. Um, and I would love to see some Sega stuff, but I kind of feel like they've done their own collections that you can purchase, and I don't feel like they want that included in Switch Online. It would just be eating into their business. So I think they're out. aside from that, I can't really think of any. I think Neo Geo is a good call. What about you, Nina? What would you love to see come? I know you had a couple of games on your list, Air Fortress from the NES and Pokemon Sapphire from the Game Boy Advance. I think that's the only mainline Pokemon game that any of us brought up. So I'm glad that someone brought up a mainline Pokemon game, because Pete is probably screaming right now that not one of us mentioned a mainline Pokemon game.
Well, because I feel like Pokemon Sapphire was actually my first Pokemon game, and that I kind of like went backwards from there, but it was Game Boy Advance when I had it on the SP. So I I don't know if that one counts for Game Boy, but talking about other consoles, one of my all-time favorite games that I played over and over again was Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Did either of you play that game?
I
It was
did.
on PlayStation, so like
It
no way
was.
it's gonna come. But I feel like the art style just fits in really nicely with Nintendo games. So that would be really cool if they could do something with it.
Yeah, that's an
I
Insomniac
mean,
game, so that one's definitely staying on PlayStation.
yeah.
From the studio that makes Spider-Man. That one's definitely
Yeah.
staying over there, unfortunately.
I just loved the storyline when I was little. Sly Cooper was unfortunately put in like that Robin Hood, the Fox, the Disney Fox category for me growing up. Where it's like, oh, the voice acting is too good for this cartoon. But yeah, Air Fortress, like you brought up a second ago, my older brother reminded me of this game and how hard it was. That was an NES game that was like this little like astronaut guy who would drop down from his ship and would have to do all these like little tasks, and I don't know what about it made it so hard, but it was so fun and so hard, and I love that one to come to Switch Online also.
Yeah, I feel like you've got
Yeah.
a very good chance of that one coming to Switch Online. Obviously, NES is already there, and I've never heard of this game. I don't know if Chewy has, and they're getting to the point where they're scraping the barrel for games that anyone's ever heard of. So, so this Air Fortress game probably stands a good chance. The other NES game I would love is Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. I think it was. Did
Ooh.
either of you play that? I loved that game. The like slight Oriental themed music, and it was great. You just play as like Jackie Chan, and you're just beating everyone up.
I need
I
to
love
look that
Jackie
one up.
Chan.
I do too. That one sounds like fun.
But yeah, I think that wraps up the Game Boy discussion. Then, as I said, we did have something else planned. I'm so sorry we didn't get to it, Nina. We had so much to talk about when it comes to Game Boy stuff. So I promise we will save that one, and we will talk about it when we come on, when you come on again, which hopefully
Yeah.
won't be too long. But thanks everyone for joining me. Nina, before we close out, just remind everyone where they can find you online.
So I'm on Twitter a lot. I'm Grizzly Crossing on Twitter, and every once in a while stream on YouTube at Grizzly Nina. So you can find me at either place where I like doodle and talk.
Awesome. And you're also co-host of Haken with Chewy, right?
That too, yeah. So
We do that from
come
time to
listen
time.
us. Come listen to us weekly. Talk about Animal Crossing, our expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely go listen to that. Like, it's the podcast for Animal Crossing fans, I will say.
We're hitting episode 200 next week.
That is madness. Have you got anything special planned for it?
Yeah. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Okay. So everyone
We'll
stay
get there.
tuned for that, because I look forward to it. You'll have to tell me what you've got planned off mic. But yeah, anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Support us on Patreon, find us on flipscreen.games, all of that stuff. Pete usually does this. It's midnight here. I'm plugged out, so you know where we are. But thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.